kind of what I wanted to do is tell you a little bit about what we're doing
Mhm.
basically, and then jump in to just kind of talking about your work and what you're doing with your work. And then at the end, what I'll do is kind of tell you what kind of the next steps and those sort of things, so we can put some of your work in our publication and that sort of thing. So
Okay.
that's kind of the overall plan. And so as far as what I'm basically doing is basically I'm putting together a group of artists that are wanting to grow their work, and they're wanting to essentially, and they could be beginners to maybe even advanced, and so they're
Mhm.
kind of also thinking about their work from a business perspective too, of how can we take our work and show it in gallery or publications or
Mhm.
those sort of things. And so I would be curious to hearing some of those sort of things too. And if we jump off to another sort of set of questions, by all means we can just go down a rabbit hole.
Okay.
um, but then also that we are trying to think here, get my train of thought here. um yeah, so that's basically about it. And so yeah, tell me about your work, where you started your work. Is it just sort of a thing where you just, as a kid, you just did it? And then
Mhm. Yeah.
tell me a little bit about be it, have you gone through a traditional education? Just tell me a little bit about
Yeah.
your
Okay.
background.
Okay. Yeah, I was definitely that kid that like drew just all the time. Like there was never a point that I ever stopped drawing. It was just straight up on through. Um,
Uh-huh.
so whenever I was like a kid, like my cousins and I, we would like draw ourselves as like Pokemon trainers and like
Okay.
then like play it out or like draw like the fashions if we were fashion designers. So like it was very much like incorporated into like even like the way we played and stuff like that. And then whenever I was like about 10 or so, I like discovered those like Christopher Hart how to draw manga books.
Okay.
And I started collecting those and like taking them with me like literally everywhere. I had like this suitcase full of art books that I brought with me and to my
That's
grandma's
funny.
house, like here, there. And yeah, like so and then so I learned from that for a while. And then
Uh-huh.
whenever I was like about 12, I played like Kingdom Hearts for the first time, and that was like a huge inspiration for me. And then whenever I was like 18, I was like, okay, this is
I
it.
can
This is
see
what I want to
that.
do. I'm gonna like start like learning like the fundamentals, which was something that a concept I was exposed to from like YouTubers online.
Sure.
And I started like listening to podcasts, like trying to draw from life, draw from photo, that whole bit.
Sure. So what are some of the things that you talked a little bit about your inspiration? You mentioned Kingdom of Hearts, right?
It's
So
Kingdom Hearts, yeah.
yeah.
it's a
So
it's a video game like made by the people that created Final Fantasy, but it
oh
also has
yeah.
Disney characters in it, so it's a
Uh-huh.
collaboration. Right.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that and kind of where you are now and doing your work.
Uh
How it has
like I
evolved and grown.
well, like it's kind of funny. Like I feel like video games are somehow like the things that sometimes affect me the most, like the things that like really make me go like, oh yes, like, I definitely want to like draw for the rest of my life.
Sure.
So like I said, I was like 12 and I played that game for the first time and I felt like it just opened up like this whole world to me. So I was like drawing the characters all the time um and I would like I bought all like the games later and stuff like that. And I
Sure.
still play them. Like I played like the first one probably about 6 or 7 times. Um but like the character designer and the creator of Kingdom Hearts, like he was a big inspiration to me, Tetsuya Nomura.
Sure.
And I feel like you can kind of still see some like elements from his work, like mine. Like if you were to put them side by side, I think you could probably like figure out like a couple of areas that are still influenced by that.
So major influence to your work even now.
Mhm. Yeah, like lines especially for some reason. I feel like that's like one area that I can really like point out, like and some like the more fun shapes, if that makes sense.
You mean like the line quality and just how
Right,
they
exactly.
cool. So what sort of projects are you currently working on, and yeah, where are you headed?
Well, I just got off of teaching like a 4-week class at a local art center,
Okay.
and it was aimed at teens, and hold on.
Have you taught before, or is this sort of
No, that was a first time for me. So it was like super scary, but I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to.
sure?
Um yeah, like it was sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay. Um it was a lot of fun, and I really liked like imparting like that information onto like these young people. Like I love like, you know, seeing like they improved so much even just over 4 weeks. It was like crazy to
Sure.
me. You know, and I had like one of the kids was like a total hot shot too, you know what I mean? Like um
Like you knew it all,
but
you mean? Or like you
like
felt like you
it
knew it
well
all?
in this no, but like in the sense that like she could draw way beyond her years, you
Okay,
know,
so
like right, and her mom was, like, super supportive, and she was, like,
that's
asking me
awesome.
all of these she was, like, asking me all these questions, and, like, I guess she felt that, like, her daughter was maybe a little too hard on herself, and, um, I gave him a little bit of advice, but something that I felt was maybe a little bit more, immediately applicable was I'm like, you know, maybe just, like, take an old drawing, try to redraw it, maybe it'll, like, kind of boost her confidence, because sometimes you feel like you're not getting anywhere until you do something like that. And I was like, you know, even you at what you feel is your worst can still beat your old best. And she was like, oh my God, that is so wise. I am so glad I asked. I was just laughing. But
It
sorry,
was humbling.
I feel like I'm getting off on a tangent, but I
No,
was
but
like so happy because like whenever her mom came, she was like telling her, she's like, Mom, like I can do all these things now. I just never knew how to approach them, you know? And, you
at
know, the
at the
thing
big
was is I always thought sorry, I
no,
always
you're
thought that
fine.
I was never going to like try to teach because I always felt like I was really bad at talking, really bad at explaining things. And someone at the center just approached me. She was like, why don't you try like teaching? Because you know, you're really different from the other people we have here at the center. I was like, why not? I'll
Sure.
try it. Yeah, so that was nice. And then what I'm currently doing is I'm illustrating a children's book uh, for someone.
Uh-huh.
And going into the new year, I want to like get started on a larger personal project I've been wanting to do for a while.
Okay.
I've been putting it off because I want it to be good,
Sure.
but I like, you know, that first project has to kind of come sometime, and it really,
Right.
you know, there's a
Right.
lot of things to probably be learned from doing it, just doing it. You know, I mean, finish not perfect, as Jake Parker says.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you mentioned, like with her, that student, did she sort of was it kind of intimidating at first, like she was gonna, but then she flipped, or what you are you saying more that she was just that you were just excited that you were able to connect with her and then be able
Hmm.
to see her work grow from here to where it ended up being?
Yeah, you know, it was funny. I wanted them to both bring in like work they'd already done, so I had like an idea of like where they were. But the
Yeah.
thing was that she barely had any, so I actually wasn't fully aware of how good she was. Probably
uh,
about 2 weeks in, and then she's like started just asking me some more like specific questions. You know, what I mean, like she wanted to know like how to like to draw hips and like, you know, just like these specific things. But
sure.
yeah,
Did you
yeah,
feel
no,
like your
it was a
work?
lot of fun. I kind of want to do it again.
Yeah, it's kind of addicting. Do you feel like your work has, how long was the program, or how long was the
It was only 4 weeks, and so it was
okay,
like 4 Saturdays in a row, and like each week I was like teaching them like different things. Like it was like a simplified like how to construct bodies, like how to like draw the head. And I worried at first. I was like, am I like going like too fast? Is this,
right,
but like, you know, I've only got 4 weeks to like try to cover this whole topic of character
right,
drawing. So it feels satisfying for what people
right,
signed up for. And so it took a lot of planning. And
sure,
that was the part that I don't miss was like just worrying about like, is this like too hard? Like, you know, is this like
building the curriculum.
right? But now that it's been created, if I offer like the same thing, basically that groundwork is, you know, already there.
No, absolutely. Do you feel that it has, even though it was 4 weekends or 4 weeks, do you feel that it's
Yeah.
affected your work a little bit?
It's kind of weird. It actually made me feel just more confident about drawing. I don't know if that makes any sense,
No,
but
that
like
is
the thing is
does absolutely.
I had to whip off like these drawings like off the fly with people watching, which would have
Nerving,
scared
isn't
me,
it?
which is kind of scary. And it actually just made me feel a little like I had to look like I was like I knew what I was doing. Um and like the thing was is I was like whipping these things off. I didn't know how I was like doing and I was like, thank God.
No, yeah, absolutely. It sort of, I remember when I was first teaching at the university, it was sort of a thing where like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this demo and people are watching you and you're like, this drawing stinks. You're
Hmm.
just like, what am I doing? And so, no, I can relate to what you're saying. So with that kind of in mind, what sort of, like when you're developing your work or your projects, kind of tell me a little bit about your workflow of how you're from the start of the idea to an idea being fully realized. What does that look like?
Uh, it kind of depends, like, what sort of inspired the idea. Like sometimes it'll be like a prompt or a song, because I'm part of an art group and we, make a piece off of a theme
Mm-hmm.
once a month. So
Mm-hmm.
I like this because I might create something I would have never otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So I just finished a piece yesterday and um the theme was sleepless nights. And my first thought was people were going to maybe do like something like sleep paralysis or like something along those lines. And
Sure.
I decided to take it in a totally different direction. And sometimes my pieces will actually start with like a character idea and I'll base a piece off of that. So I came up with the idea of this sleepless night as in shining armor.
Sure.
And this is amusing to me anyway. I was like, so I came up with the idea of him actually like fighting off sleep in the form of sheep because he wants to stay awake. And so I just have this huge painting of this guy looking totally unhinged, like slaughtering sheep.
In the process.
Yeah. So yeah, I finished that yesterday.
Okay. Do you go through like are you doing a lot of sketching beforehand, or is it just something that immediately?
In my more normal process with that, I would like try to explore all the different options in
Uh-huh.
like a thumbnail format. I'm a big thumbnailer.
Yeah. How
In
many?
both like regular and like color thumbnails. Like I try to get as much planned out as possible. So whenever I'm actually working on the piece, it's a lot less stress on me because I know where I'm going.
Well, then you can be more creative with the moments that you want to be um,
Hmm.
designing a little bit more, where you've already planned out kind of the bigger pieces of your
Hmm.
composition or those sort of things. That what you're kind of talking
Oh
about?
yeah, and you get you can discover come up with new ideas as you're doing that. And sometimes something
Sure.
might sound good or look good in your head, but whenever you actually get it down there, it doesn't look quite right.
Right.
So, like I said, I'm a big thumbnailer, and sometimes I'll actually just sit down and have like just a brainstorming session.
Uh-huh.
So, like, I'll just sit down, make a bunch of different thumbnails, like whatever's coming to my mind, I'll work with it, or like maybe I'll have like a character idea.
And you're not worried about if it's messy or if it's just you're
No,
not worried
it's
about.
yeah, and sometimes I can even get like my next six pieces all planned out like in a single sitting, or like, okay, well, I have like this pool to choose from whenever I when I go on to the next piece. If I don't have any kind of engagement, I can just pick something from here and
Sure.
work with it.
Sure. So when you're like, how many sketches will you sometimes end up doing in that sort of end of the project or process?
It depends. Some of them I feel like I might come up with like in just two or three, and then some of them it takes a lot. There was it was probably about actually 2 years ago now, but we were working with the theme like nightmare.
Okay.
And like I had this nightmare right before we started doing this, and I was like, it was like a gift from God. And so there was all these elements in this dream that I had that I was like trying to figure out like what I could use to actually create a piece out of, because like I said, it was a weird dream.
Sure.
And I actually ended up with something a lot more simple than what I wanted, but you know, it was effective, I suppose.
Yeah,
But I made like probably at least 20 sketches for that
with that
before I
one.
finally settled on something. Yeah.
And then after you go through sketching, kind of what's your next steps? Now, obviously, each project brings its own different challenges, but typically,
Hmm.
what are kind of the next steps that you're?
Well, like I work either with alcohol markers or watercolor or gouache, and like those are my main mediums. I'm starting to like delve a little bit more into the digital thing, but so I'll have like, you
Like
know, I'll do this. I'll
digital watercolor, or
like just digital painting,
just
like,
digital
but
painting?
I haven't really made any like true finished piece. Like they're all like kind of little things,
Mm-hmm.
more like whenever I was like making the stickers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you saw them. Like I have
Yeah,
like
they
these
look really
dessert
cool.
stickers that, yeah. um
Yeah, your dog
so
ones and your
yeah,
ice cream and dessert ones.
I loved working on the dessert stickers so much. Um but so I'll do the thumbnail process, and then I'll try to do a larger sketch, like a more finished sketch. Um and then I will transfer that over to either watercolor paper or Bristol, depending on what I'm doing,
Hmm.
with the light box. And with markers, then I would ink it with a fine liner or something, and then color that in with markers. And with watercolor, I would use like a light pencil to transfer it over, and then just start painting.
Cool. So what you'll be doing, what you will do is that maybe you'll take a sketch or a drawing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you'll take a sketch or a drawing, and then put that on a light box so that you can then trace, not necessarily trace, but you're taking that idea and then developing it further. That
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
And so, and then after, how do you do? So for like, for example, like your stickers, tell me, tell me a little. Is there any other steps that you're doing beyond that to get through your process, or?
With well, okay, with the stickers, that was like a digital process from start to finish. So I actually just started sketching with those. I didn't really do any thumbnails, but I would just like do like a rough sketch and try to figure it out. If I didn't like it, I just got rid of that layer and did it again
Uh huh.
till I found something that I liked. And then I would actually choose, so I had the rough sketch, and then I would take another layer, and then I would clean that up, but I would also choose a single color with which um I would kind of base the other colors around.
Sure.
So it was kind of like a rough ink, a little bit sketchier than I would normally do. And then I started going over that with some colors, and then I was using like a medium brown at like 70% opacity, and
Okay.
or no, actually no, it was 57% opacity. And then just
That's
like
awesome.
I would like pick up colors, add some in. I, you know, just trying to get something that was like pretty cohesive,
Sure.
because that was my first time really like painting. Like I'd done like flat colors with like sort of cell shading stuff before, but that was like a new process. But I found that it was easier for me than worrying about all the different brushes that come in the program. Like, well, what does this one do? What does that one do?
Just
If I just stick with one brush and just change the opacity once in a while.
and not get lost in all the different options and
Hmm.
possibilities and just
Right.
yeah.
Because that was what made digital hard for me. Is there's like all these tools, and like I'm like, what does opacity even like really mean? Like I know that what it means, but it's not like I can actually see the thickness of the paint. This is why I'm like a
Right. Or
traditional
feel
artist
it.
first and foremost, right?
Absolutely.
And like
Versus,
you
yeah.
can't like feel it. Yeah, but that was a good learning experience, especially since I did more than one of them. If I had only done it once, I don't think that I would have learned as much. But since I was trying to repeat that same process over and over, I think I learned a lot more.
No, that's really important because when you're doing work and you're trying to, if you know, make your, how do I use what word? Base, if you use if your idea is too expansive, or you don't give yourself enough boundaries to work off of.
Hmm.
Like for example, I'm just going to work with this one brush. Here's my set opacity. I'm just going to
Hmm.
deal with these parameters so I can understand that piece. Where if you
Hmm.
just try to open it way up, you get lost in all the other possibilities,
Hmm.
and you're not. It's almost you lose your focus, and the actual task that you're
Hmm.
trying to accomplish.
And then with digital, it's so easy to just get stuck in this like loop of just like changing things constantly. Cause like you can just get rid of
Quickly
the
and
layer, like do it over again, undo it, like whereas with traditional, like you just kind of have to live with it unless you
right.
decide to just do the whole thing over again. But
And the traditional, it's hard to um even there's very few people that can do this, but implementing the same exact thing and get as another almost exact photocopy of it.
hmm right.
Yeah. So what do you like better? Do you like the digital better, or do you like traditional better, or
Traditional better, definitely. Like I like the feel of it a lot more. But the thing is, like, there's no denying that like digital can be better for so many things, like especially more like precise things, like whenever I was doing the stickers or
right?
a lot of people. I understand now why a lot of people decide to make their comic digitally because
Mm-hmm.
like there's so much room for error whenever you're doing it traditionally.
Yeah. No, like for example, when when I'm doing some of my work and I'm kind of pressed for time, especially
Hmm.
having the ability to do the work digitally, and then for example, if a panel doesn't work right or something needs to
Right.
change, you can adjust the size of it. You can quickly
Hmm.
do it, where if it's already, let's say in comics in type pencil, then it's
Hmm.
okay, then I'll find
Right.
myself, so I find myself going to digital in those cases where just
Hmm.
otherwise
Yeah,
it's
because even just like little things can like make such a big difference, especially like with comics. Like something might just be a little bit too big, a little too taking up too much room on the panel, and
the
it,
scene.
it's
Sure.
I find it's just a lot easier if you like. I've only made like a couple like little things, like I'm just experimenting with it right now, but like
Yeah.
it was a lot easier than whenever I was like I did like a 9-page like comic like last year, and I like inked it and I like did it all with markers, like
Right.
which I liked the end result
Right.
mostly, but it was a lot harder and it took me like 4 months, which is a little nuts for only 9 pages.
Oh, there's a lot to think about in terms of the whole design and the scene
Hmm.
design and what things to keep in the scene and what things to leave out and all that sort of stuff. No, absolutely. Um, so if you would, how do I ask this? Yeah, so in terms of where you are as an artist, what has helped you out the most? Or in other words, were you about to say something?
Or the internet.
Just well,
Like
yeah,
I don't know if I really said anything about it, but I like, I
you did a little bit.
everything everything I learned was like from the internet and from books. Like I didn't have a like a formal um education. Like I only like attended like one watercolor class and that was about it. And that was like a year ago.
Okay. And and you're not doing any kind of formal school or anything like that right now.
No.
That's really cool, because I think that's one of the things that I think is changing, where
Hmm.
because I like I said, I came out of the university system where that was like such
Hmm.
a major gatekeeper in terms of,
Right.
especially before the internet, and it was something that your art was only going to be presented in this way, and if
Hmm.
you ventured beyond that one direction or another, it became something that, I don't know, in a sense isn't your own work, if you put it
Right.
that way. But I think, um how do I ask this? So if you would, starting out, what was something that you would tell yourself, I guess, that, I don't know, however, a year ago or 10 years ago or whatever it was, 5 years ago, what would be that one thing that they should know about in going through this process?
I'm not sure. I feel like it's like a bunch of like little things, like a couple like little missteps like that would have made I think a bit of a difference. So like I would have actually I would have done some of the paid services that were like online at the time, um, as opposed to just sticking with like the free YouTube resources, which there are some very good ones out there.
Sure.
But they're like some of the some of the paid services have a more like structure to them that I think
Like
would
a
have been a little bit
Skillshare sort of thing,
easier.
what you're talking about?
I tried Skillshare, I didn't like it. But like
Well,
I
for
tried,
example then.
for example, I used I bought Proko's figure drawing course, and
Okay,
he
yep.
has like he has
He's
the free
awesome.
version, right? He has the free, and then he has like the premium. But I decided to like get the premium because to me it wasn't like, you know, you save a lot of money by not going to art school. You might as well put it into some of these other like
Yep.
services. So it was like only like $90, and I liked the way he had the whole thing structured.
Sure,
And so
sure.
I wasn't like, because otherwise I was like teaching myself figure drawing by just like drawing from photos,
Yeah.
and that helped, but that only took me so far. And there was like a bunch of little things that I should have known, like whenever I was like gesture drawing, I was like worrying about like all those, like I was trying to get as much detail as I could like in that amount of time, and
Right.
that was something that I learned not to do in that. And then just a bunch of other like exercises I would have never known to do if I hadn't watched that. And I was like, well, I probably would have saved myself a lot of time if I would have like done this at the beginning, you know.
Sure.
But
No, yeah, for example, like you mentioned gesture drawing or being able to get the idea of the pose and get the idea of the character that you're representing and not go
mhm,
straight into the tiny details of how the arm
right.
socket fits into your shoulder
Yeah.
and how's this crazy
Just
thing,
trying to
how's
get it
this
down
head
as
fit
like
on the
fast as you
neck
can.
and all those sort of things. Because then you start, I mean, you start worrying about those details, like you mentioned. You're gonna,
Mhm.
well, your work shows it that it has, it doesn't feel static or it doesn't feel stiff or it has movement or energy to it. And
Mhm.
so that's something that's
I'm
really really important. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm really glad that you say that, because like, I mean, like a couple of other people have told me that as well. They're like, I can really tell that you do like a lot of gesture drawing just based on like how much movement and like the kind of poses you get.
Yeah,
But a large part of it was like I love like animators drawings. Like
yeah,
whenever like I'm feeling uninspired, that's what I look to.
yeah.
You know, people like Glenn Keane, Ollie
Okay.
Johnson, Frank Thomas, you know,
Yeah.
like I didn't want to be an animator, but I wanted to draw like an animator.
No, there's a lot to learn
So
from
yeah.
that. Like for
Hmm.
example, just a simple exercise of drawing sacks of flour or pillows with
That was a
personality.
yeah. I love flower stack drawings. I actually did quite a few recently. Yeah.
No, you can tell that I'm looking at your work, and you can tell that it's there. Absolutely. 100%.
Hmm. And in this is probably slightly going back to the previous topic of like, you know, my process, but
Sure.
um I like I like work in my sketchbook like a lot. Like some people who like some artists who know me in real life call me a sketchbookist, and I think they don't even quite realize I actually create finished pieces of art, because they're like, you know, you should create something finished. I'm like, I do, but so like with that, I like to
Mm-mm-mm.
recently I've been like a lot more like into just drawing like whatever. So before I used to sort of self-censor in the sense that I was afraid that what I was doing wouldn't make sense to my audience. Like, why is she spending all this time like
Mm.
developing these ideas? Like, I'm filling up several sketch pages like of this one character who isn't even gonna
Mhm.
be anything. But like, I found that it was like really, first of all, really freeing. But I learned a lot from it as well. So,
Yeah.
for example, like I've recently been into this idea of like drawing animals as metalcore singers, like, you
Okay.
know, like screamo and stuff.
Sure.
Because I was like, I found like these images online of like these lines, and it kind of reminded me of how it looked and how it felt. And so it started this thing where I'm like trying to like design like this line that it I'm trying to design like this lion like character, and then I'm like um trying to like get these poses, trying to like bring that intensity that I feel whenever I listen to like harder music like into that, and like it, and they do like these like crazy like poses on stage and like try to like capture that energy in there. And
Ah.
then another example was I had this like black paper sketchbook, which I think really sparked a lot of this. But I
Cool.
had like this idea for this like play like game idea uh for like a plague nurse like on a quest for the cure for the plague, and she like beats enemies to death with her doctor bag.
Yeah.
And so I like try to like work out all these like poses, like how she's like going to like handle this like doctor bag, or like what she looks like whenever she's like defeated, or her
Sure.
reaching into her bag. And like, and because there was actually no expression on her face because her face is just a plague doctor mask,
Sure.
um like I was trying to like get the emotion purely like in her body language. And after I did that, like I just started like developing all these other things like in that world, and it was all like not really for anything, but then like people from like um art places in real life, they were like really attracted to it. They were like, wow, this is like really different, I've never like seen anything like this before. Of course they're not like
Oh,
on the internet as much, so like sometimes I feel like I'm not really that unique in that sense, but like maybe on a local sense perhaps.
sure.
But you know, like it was fun, and that, and I got like into drawing monsters, so it like, and like buildings and like other things I wouldn't have otherwise been drawing, because I was able to attach it to a project and trying to like
Uh,
create the rules of a project that didn't even really exist, but I felt like it was
sure.
good design practice and stuff. Sorry, I felt like that was really
No, that
rambly.
was no, that's really good because you brought up in that the how other people looking at your work, and that what's your kind of your how do you work through maybe artists or other people that look at your work, and you know they like it or they don't, or tell me a little bit about that.
So like I started like about a year ago, with no 2 years ago, I started like attending like a local figure drawing session. It was a closed one, but um and I actually found like a really great like support system in those people.
Absolutely.
And like I feel like I basically like adopted like five art moms or something, because like they all just
Yeah.
like love what I do, and I
No, it's
don't know how to like
encouraging.
handle it. I don't know how to handle it a lot of the time, but at the same time like it's been really great. And like a lot of them like even have like say like connections that I wouldn't expect, they
Absolutely.
or they like, you know, worked as like, you know, these things that I wouldn't expect. And it's actually really great. And I wouldn't expect it like where I live, you know. And I was
What?
actually going to like bring this up like a little later, but like, you know, I think it's good to kind of keep a watch on your local scene, because I think that online artists have this tendency to think that online is where all the action is.
Not
But like
necessarily.
I've seen, right, but I've seen like a lot of success even just on the local level. So, you know.
Absolutely. No, you certainly want to go where the work is, and that you bring up a really good point about your having a support group or having a group around you to not only encourage you but help you grow and give you slight, you know, give trusted opinions and those sort of things to keep moving
Mhm.
your work forward. But on the flip side of that is, what's kind of your thought of experiencing maybe negative criticism and those sort of things? How do you work through some of that?
It's like
'Cause that happens
I
as
feel
an
like
artist. I mean,
it like it only happens to me actually like once, like sort of in a great while. And
sure.
what's actually kind of funny is a lot of times it came from like the people who are like maybe closer to me, but it wasn't like
It's
beat
true.
down or like trying to make me feel bad about anything. But
Sure.
like, so whenever I was making the transition from having a more anime-esque style to, you know, I was like learning like the Andrew Loomis method for drawing the head and things like
Yep.
that. And so
Yep.
what ended up resulting was like really weird faces,
Sure.
because it was like okay, you're drawing like big eyes, small noses, small mouths, and then it almost like reeled the other way because I was like trying to compensate. So
Sure.
like super tiny eyes, super huge nose, like that kind of thing. And so like my mom says to me, she's like, you know, your drawings are really looking like super macho manly.
Oh no.
And I was like butthurt for like a couple of hours, and then like I realized she was right, and it was like it actually saved me probably months of finally figuring it out myself.
No, so using that as an opportunity as well, regardless positive
And
or negative. Is that
what
just
probably one of the more common criticisms I get is that there isn't enough contrast in my work,
hmm,
like, you know, value wise. And I would
sure.
actually probably agree with that. So I've been trying to like pay attention to that, as well as like brighten up my colors a little bit because I had the tendency to stick a lot with like more muted palettes.
Sure. Well, like I'm looking at the the popsicle with
Hmm.
the looks like the ocean,
Right.
and then the sky above. That one has really good contrast where those the
Hmm.
blue and then the oh, I guess aqua color, sorry, lack of a better term. It
It's
has
okay.
it's a totally different contrast in value and energy there. So no,
Yeah,
absolutely.
like, and what's funny is like that one specifically, I actually struggled with the value on. I was like, no, this like still just needs to be darker, and I just kept having to like, I'm like darker, 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 lighter, 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 So it's actually kind of funny you mentioned that one specifically. But just to wrap up that thing, what I was saying about like the
That's
local
funny.
level, I feel like I'm all over the place, even though I planned for this.
No, you're on
Um,
target.
is like it helped a lot too with my social anxiety, and I don't want to like get on a
Mm,
big thing about that, but I struggle with it really bad.
sure.
And this was helpful because I was able to talk about things like art, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
something that I feel like I liked talking about, with
Hmm.
people who also understand art. So,
Hmm.
that was it's been really good at improving that. And they also encouraged me to like start, entering in shows, even though I felt at the time like I was like, that's like the fine art world. I don't belong there,
Oh,
but
and there's many other possibilities too. Yeah, beyond just the gallery scene or that sort of thing.
mhm.
So where are you taking your work, or where are you showing beyond the internet, or even on the
uh
internet? Where are you?
like mostly just like a couple of like local galleries. Like it's funny because I feel like I know all of them until like another one comes up. And that's what also was helpful with like connections because um I won first place in drawing at a college campus like a couple months ago. And I wouldn't have known about it if one of like the people that I've met through this whole thing
Yeah,
hadn't told me about it.
yeah,
And that was great. So I think like it definitely don't underestimate like, the power of like people who are like local, because you can actually find like really great support system and like I don't know, it's actually been just a really good experience and I would have never guessed that, because I'm a huge like introvert and like don't look at me, don't talk to me. Um so, I like I've seen the light. I've been sort of converted.
no, you're good. Let's see here. What? So one question I have is in terms of how you go about your work, do you have any kind of how do I say it? Business tips per se in terms of either
I feel like
productivity?
I feel like I kind of already covered it with like the local thing because that was kind of going to be my response to that.
Perfect.
Because like I said, I've had more like I feel like I've had more success local on the local level than I have on the online level, which I'm trying to of course improve.
Sure.
Because the internet is also quite powerful. But yeah, and like although like a small tip I would have is like just start saving money.
Mm,
Like even if you don't have like a project you want to work on like right now, just start
right.
putting back a little bit of that money whenever you actually do want to do a project, and then that money
Correct.
will be there.
Yeah, absolutely. So one question that we're kind of working through is, so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So as far as like asking your why art, why the type of drawings, kind of getting at and the way I'm trying to phrase it is that the why is sort of the idea of the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing. And in other words, for me, in kind of what my why is really to I think to show my kids that nothing is impossible, that
Hmm.
you can. So the stories that I do, or the illustrations that I'm most entertained by, they have
Hmm.
those themes of overcoming the impossible, and that can be
Hmm.
positive or
Right.
negative. And I think that gets to the heart as to why I'm doing the artwork and those sort of things. So I would just be curious as to hearing what that is. And
Yeah.
I'm curious to, when you saw the
I
why,
had
you're like, what do you mean why? I'm curious to hear what your
no,
thoughts are
I
about
did,
that
but
too.
like I like kind of had something sort of half written out like to kind of reference because like I was like I know that if I don't, I'm gonna like forget what I wanted to say here, but I feel like it's
No.
so cheesy. But like, I just think that it's so amazing that like we as artists can show other people these ideas that we have. Like it's like whenever you have like a dream and you wish you could show someone else like the craziness, it's like we kind of have that power. I mean, like anybody technically has that power, but like we've equipped ourselds with the skills to be able to,
Yeah.
but like it makes me think a lot about people who have like ideas and like just kind of let them die inside them. They don't do anything
Mm,
with them. And
that's
like
cool.
whenever I'm like watching like usually it's a an animated film that I feel really touched by. It hold on one second.
Okay.
It really gets me that like we as humans are like capable of like creating something that can feel real like to someone else, to like an audience, you know what I mean? And like I think about like people like the guys who created VeggieTales. Do you know what that is?
Yep.
Um like it all started out as like, well, first it started with an idea, but it
Right.
was just two guys and a computer in a spare
Right.
room and they
Right.
decided to do it. You know,
Right.
they decided to go for it
Right.
and they created something that touched so many people growing up, and like even though the original show is gone now, like
Yeah.
we all kind of carry it in our hearts. It's been a big part of our lives, and like that's so that's just so special,
Sure.
at least to me it is. And like the same thing goes for like people like Walt Disney, where like he faced so many like downs in his life, even like
But
even overall he was a success. So many of his films didn't make their money back whenever he was alive.
yeah.
And like it was kind of rather this thought that made me think that I really do want to like jump on these larger projects I have, because
Mm.
I don't really want to let these things like I don't want to like not I just don't want to let these things die with me
Let
because
the
I was too afraid
opportunities
of
slip
failing.
away.
Right, because I was
Yeah.
afraid of failing.
Yeah.
Like whenever I was like thinking about like like some real thoughts before, I was like, if I were to die, what would I be like really upset that I didn't do? And it would be like working on these big projects, you know what I mean? Like, and even if
If I might
they like,
stop you there, because like when you're talking about in terms of when well, like it's kind of a weird exercise, and it is weird, but the
hmm
idea of writing out your own obituary in terms of, okay, what am I going to be
right,
remembered as, and what are the
hmm
things, the core values that are so important to me that I think are worth sharing to the world. So you're really getting at I think a really cool point.
right, and like these people that created a lot of these things, and like some of it is obviously more popular than others, but like J.R.R. Tolkien's been gone for a long time, but we still enjoy like the books and the films that have been created by it, and it's like it's this lasting memory. And that I feel like that's
Yep.
something that we as artists have it's a special privilege we have, you know what I mean, that we're able to leave these kind of things behind, that
Yeah.
and like I don't feel like I'll become like a household name like J.R.R. Tolkien, but
Sure.
like I think that like if I can just create something that can maybe feel like real to someone else and also like feel real to me, like in the same way that like I felt whenever I would look at like animators drawings and like how inspiring that was to me, how real that character felt to me, if I can just at least get these projects out there, like get this thing out there, whether or not it's successful, you know what I mean, I think that I'll feel just the success of having done it. And if someone else feels inspired by it, then like that would just be amazing, you know
Absolutely. That gets to, yeah, definitely the why. No, that's cool. Thank you. Um, where might people find your stuff?
okay, so on Instagram I'm JazCapri underscore.
Okay.
um and I think it's like JazCapri on Facebook, and then I have JazCapri.com, which is like my portfolio. So
Perfect. Cool. Well, thank you, Jazz. Jazz, right?
yeah, Jazz.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jazz.